Welcome to Manchester and to the Manchester Airport Runway Visitor Park. So this is a slightly different video to usual. I'll try and shelter you from the wind. It's my first video as well using the iPhone 6 Plus, so we'll see how this one goes. The Peak District is over that way. You can't quite see it because of the clouds. But as you can hear, the runway is right there. But we've not come to plane spot today. We've come to take a tour around the Nimrod, but more importantly, the Concorde, which is in the hangar over there. My friend Ray's with me today, or should I say, rather I'm with Ray today. This has been a dream of Ray's for a long time, to see the Concorde and come on a tour, and his girlfriend very kindly bought him and myself as well. I'm his +1 today. She bought him a gift voucher to see the Concorde and also the Nimrod.
These things will cost anywhere between £2,000 and £3,000 and £60,000, and on a sortie they will drop up to 200 of those. The crew of Nimrod would usually be about 12, sometimes slightly higher depending upon the role it had to do. I say a normal endurance of 8 to 9 hours, which is a typical transatlantic crossing of a Comet airliner. And in that period of time, of course, the crew need food and sustenance. So being an original airline, it was a simple matter to incorporate a standard airline galley for the crew. MAD ESM station, MAD stands for Magnetic Anomaly Detector. Coming out the rear of the tail of the aircraft is a long boom. In the farmost part of that is the magnetometer, measuring the Earth's magnetic field, which is pretty consistent. However, if something large and metallic gets into that field, then it causes a disturbance of that magnetic field that this aircraft is measuring. It appears on this chart here, normally it traces just a straight line. In the event of there being a disturbance caused by something large and metallic, well, I should say large and ferrous rather than metallic, then you get a vicious zigzag of the needle. So it indicates that the aircraft has flown over something under the surface of the water, which is of a fair size and is metallic iron. So this was really the nerve centre of the aircraft. 4 people worked here: routine navigator, tactical navigator, air electronics officer and radio operator. Third seat, yeah. So a typical 1960s flight deck, and in many respects it's not that dissimilar to what you're going to see when you go on Concorde a little later on. Each pilot's got the same set of instruments in front of them. Top row you've got the airspeed indicators and the altimeters and the artificial horizon, and then the next row down you've got the navigation instruments and the vertical speed indicators, and then down at the bottom you've got the turn and slip indicators and the position of the flying controls. Between the pilots you've got the engine instruments, 4 engines, so 4 identical columns, and the weather radar in between. Across the top is the autopilot system, and then you've got the throttle levers on the centre pedestal, but notice you've got 2 levers in front of those 4 attached to them on the outermost throttles. They're the reverse thrust levers, so you've only got reverse thrust on the 2 outboard engines. When you go on Concorde, you'll see that you've got reverse thrust on all 4. The little red levers at the front of the centre console are the undercarriage levers, and the black lever to the right of the throttles is the bomb bay lever. The black lever to the left is the parking brakes, and then down this side you've got the flaps, you've got the trim wheels and 2 further trim wheels at the side, and the fuel cocks down at the bottom there. On the control column, unlike on Concorde, you've got 2 buttons there marked C and N. Just lift those sort of flaps up. That's it. And the red one, you've got your finger on the nuclear trigger. That is the button for dropping the nuclear weapons, and the C for dropping conventional
Steady
weapons.
with that one, Ray.
Don't push the red button.
And up here, you've got the in-flight refueling system. And the 2 pilots, if you sort of crouch down and look up, then you'll see the probe at the top. That's what the pilots have to steer into that hose pipe flailing behind the tanker, often at night time, 20,000 feet in pretty bad weather, and then stay hooked up to that for 20 minutes whilst they transfer 7,000 or 8,000 gallons of fuel. The fuel comes through the probe, comes through here, down this pipe here, and then down here, then it goes through the weapons bay out into the fuel tanks in the wing.
It's all over.
This is the POS pod or thermopod, and that's where the flares and chaff are dispensed for self-defense of the aircraft. This can be taken off very easily, as you can see, and it can be replaced by self-defense guided missiles. So it was in effect capable of attacking other aircraft. Absolutely huge. Carry 14 Stingray torpedoes.
Welcome back. So we've just had the quick Nimrod tour. It was about 40 or 45 minutes race, something like that. Yeah, very fascinating. Thoroughly knowledgeable gentleman, and it was a great tour. So we're heading over to Concorde now, and I'll try and film as much as possible. Just about to get run over. You could probably see that before I could, actually. So Concorde is in the hangar just there.
Right, this is Concorde. What did you notice about it? Any thoughts?
It's much bigger than I thought.
Big?
It's high off the ground as well.
Right,
It's really
good. Good point. It's a long aeroplane. It's 204 feet long. It's only about 20 foot off the jumbo. It's high off the ground, as you said. Might as well cover that straight away. Why is it high off the ground? When Concorde takes off, it's a delta wing. It needs to pitch its nose up to about 12 degrees. Now, the engines intrude behind the wings. As the nose goes up, the tail goes down. You want to scrape the engines on the ground? You need a long undercarriage. The airplane itself is that shape because that's the best shape for flying at Mach 2. Mach 2, 1,350 miles an hour, 25 miles a minute, flying anything up to 60,000 feet. The aircraft is incredibly efficient at Mach 2. That's the speed it's designed at. Everything else has to be a compromise. The compromise is at low speed. If you think of a conventional aircraft, it has flaps at the back. It has leading edge droops. All of these to deal with this low speed flying. This aircraft, you can't do it. That's in most aircraft. Fuel is in the wings. There are 13 fuel tanks. Fuel is plugged in both sides. House comes up. Goes both sides. That's 250 miles an hour on the ground to get airborne. It's got to be pretty hefty. I think they sound like £260 per square inch nitrogen filled tyres. Now you won't be looking. The undercarriage retracts inwards up into the centre of the fuselage. Now those of you who've got a good eye might notice the undercarriage is actually longer than the space they've got to go. If both of those legs just went straight up, they'd meet in the middle. The short end, then it's retracted. Now this is the important bit of the aircraft. This is what makes it work. This is the bit that was hard to get right. Jet engines are round. The intakes are square. There's a reason for that. These ramps here, the engines can only take subsonic air. They will not work with supersonic air. You've got to slow the air down. These ramps do it. So do it by creating a shock wave. The shock wave will go from the ramp and it goes onto this edge here. When the aircraft begins to go supersonically, these ramps will move down to this position, and that ramp at the back will move down to there. That again will create a bigger shock wave. Air at 11 feet is slowed from 1350 miles an hour down to 350 to 400 miles an hour. At the same time, it's compressed, it's heated. It's like a supercharger. The engine at supersonic speed is coasting. It's got hot, pressurised air. The fan isn't working very hard. You're getting near that. The engine is a Rolls-Royce Snecma Olympus 593. Started its life in the Vulcan bomber, where it produced 11,000 pounds of thrust. Developed for Concorde, it produces 32,000 pounds of thrust. That wasn't quite enough, so we use reheat. We saw in the video the lighted tail in each engine. What reheat is, it's not very efficient. We squirt fuel into the hot exhaust, creates another combustion chamber, more thrust, more heat, more energy. That's only used for takeoff for about 45 seconds and then for about 15 minutes for the supersonic acceleration. Once we get supersonic to about 1.3, 1.4 Mach, we don't need reheat anymore. The magic of the intakes, the efficiency of the airframe's getting into its ideal regime. It will operate smoothly, it will operate efficiently. You don't need reheat anymore. The afterburner. So these are secondary nozzles and primary nozzles inside. They vary to optimise the thrust produced by the engines. These are in the takeoff position. If you look, there is a gap there. It's bringing air in. It's to quieten the aircraft. It's smoothing the airflow between the air outside and the really hot gases coming over the engine. When they go into supersonic flight, those nozzles will diverge. And they also provide reverse thrust when landing. When we slow the aircraft's got a good braking system. We have carbon brakes on the Concorde because we've got to dissipate an awful lot of heat. Also brake fans to assist in cooling them. We use reverse thrust. These doors will close together behind the engine. They deflect the thrust forwards, upwards and downwards. Very efficient at high speed, which is why when an aircraft lands, you hear it on every aircraft you land here, you get a roar of reverse thrust after you've touched down. It then quietens because as you slow down it's less efficient, the wheel brakes will do the job better. Tires are bursting before. That's about it.
This is it, right? Touch the aircraft.
Yeah. And your head.
Hi there.
Come in, have a seat.
I've waited about 20 years to do this.
The memories come flooding back. You remember it? Yeah.
Want to win the seat, mate, or? How's it feel?
Amazing.
Plenty of space for your legs, don't you? Oh dear, you've got back more. I don't think I'll get this room on the way to on the way to Thailand or Sydney next year. It's certainly not cattle class, is it?
No, definitely not, mate.
Right, welcome on board.
Drink, please.
It's a little bit warmer in here, hopefully. A bit cool outside. So the aircraft's got 100 seats, 40 seats in this cabin, 60 seats in the rear cabin. All the seats are exactly the same as one class, Concorde class. When you've been in the flight deck, you can wander down. The rear cabin, there's a glass screen across the entrance. We've blocked off the rear cabin. We keep it nice and clean and tidy because we conduct weddings in the rear cabin. So Mach 2 is twice the speed of sound. So it's very roughly 1,350 miles an hour. 23 miles a minute, faster than a bullet out of a gun. Concorde cruised up to 60,000 feet. Today you'd be lucky to get to 40,000 feet. And the outside temperature would be about minus 60, minus 65 degrees centigrade. So incredibly cold. Concorde's main route, over the years they've tried various different routes, but Concorde's main route was London, New York. One of the most lucrative routes in the world, the two financial capitals of the world, where you could charge nice high fares to pay for the trip. That flight would take about 3 hours 20 minutes. Today it would take 7.5 hours, so less than half the time it would take today. Up to 60,000 feet, no one else up there. Nice thing as well, of course, is 60,000 feet, no other aircraft, so no other air traffic problems. So Concorde flew the same route all the time. If you were to fly today across the Atlantic, you're sent all over the place. Depending on the weather, it's got a big influence on their aircraft, so you can fly further north, further south, whatever. Concorde flew the same route all the time, dead straight, the best route straight there. So it was a very consistent time. Again, today your flight time can vary by an hour and a half, depending on the weather conditions. Nice thing as well, there's no weather. So above about 52,000 feet, there is no weather. So there's no turbulence, no clouds. So very, very smooth. So there's no issue with that. Obviously there's a price to pay to fly in Concorde. So Concorde last flew 11 years ago, 2003, October 2003. So in October 2003, the return fare to New York was £7,200. So in today's money, it'd be a bit more. you're talking about £8,000 to £9,000 in today's money. So only certain people could afford to fly in Concorde. It wasn't always full. It wasn't always full.
Did they have seatbelts on those?
Very well spotted, yeah.
Just checking them out.
Anything to do with Concorde is very collectible. And gradually the seatbelts were disappearing. So the remaining ones we removed and put in storage. So the rear cabin's got its seatbelts, this cabin hasn't. If you go on eBay, you'll find all sorts of Concorde stuff is very, very collectible.
I didn't hear about
Yeah, it was a cargo aircraft, Russian-built cargo aircraft.
It was
Latvian, yeah.
Latvian registered.
And it wasn't answering to the radio, and it was heading towards London.
Right.
So the RAF scrambled 2 Typhoons from Lincolnshire, and they actually allowed the Typhoons to fly supersonically
on land.
over land. And there was a huge amount of controversy because of the boom. Because you're not allowed to fly over land supersonically.
Yeah, if you actually hear one on the ground, it is, as you said, just like Dollop of Thunder.
It's thunder, yeah. It's like a double boom.
I've never seen the problem with it, to be honest.
No. Well, they thought in the early days that if they flew across deserts and sort of unpopulated areas, but it became a big political issue in places like India and Malaysia. Said you can't fly over our land, or we want something in return.
Exactly.
Yeah. So there was a lot of politics.
Certainly with America it was.
And America as well. Absolutely. Yeah.
Because they didn't make their own, did they?
No. So we're spinning at 1,000 miles an hour at the moment. Concorde flew 1,350 miles an hour, so it flew faster than the rotational speed of the Earth. That's where you get this confusion about arriving before you depart. The other way of illustrating it would be when they had an evening flight from Heathrow. So you could be taking off from Heathrow and it's just gone dark. You take off from Heathrow and you'd head west, and the sun would slowly rise in the west, something we've never seen. The sun would slowly rise in the west because you arrived before you departed. So hopefully if you left in early evening in darkness, you'd arrive in the same day in the afternoon in sunshine. So the sun actually rose in the west with Concorde because of this thing about flying faster than the rotational speed.
It would assist with takeoffs and landings, but as you can see he's got quite a workload of his own really. And where you're sat in the corner there, so that was a spare seat unless there was a training captain. That's where he would sit. But apparently when the Queen Mother flew on the aircraft, she used to like to sit there and chat to the crew.
Really?
Probably with a gin and Dubonnie, I should imagine. Back in the day. All this instrumentation's actually duplicated on my side, so there's not as much as at first appears. You've got your artificial horizon, which is common on all aircraft, airspeed indicator that showed them when they were going through the speed of sound and beyond. This is a Mach meter that showed them, airspeed indicator, that's the Mach meter that showed them when they were going through the speed of sound and beyond. And these are navigation instruments. You've got your compass and radio direction finders. And that was a radio altimeter, which was very accurate below 2,500 feet. You probably saw the sensors for that when you were underneath the aircraft. And that's the pressure altimeter, which they use the rest of the time. These are the main engine parameters. You've got one vertical line for each engine. Pilots tend to scan diagonally, so they would see at a glance if any of the engines were performing differently. So quite a good scanning layout, that. If you ever saw Concorde come into land, she was always pitched up at an angle. And that's so she could generate enough lift with the delta wing when she was flying slowly. But they realised when they were designing the aircraft that the pilots wouldn't be able to see the runway because of the long slim nose. So under the control of this lever, what happens is the visor or the heat shield that you can see through there slid down into the nose, and the nose came down by 12.5 degrees. The aircraft was pitched up by 11 degrees, so they got a superb view then when they were coming into land. I mean, bear in mind these seats will be much further forward. They're actually cut out here to take this yoke, so you'll be right up against the control column and raised up. But that's a lever that does all that. And this is a lever that raises and lowers the undercarriage. And there's the indicators that show when the undercarriage is down and locked. And you notice there's 4 of them because there's that little extra wheel that you would have seen when you were underneath the aircraft.
Did they only use that occasionally? Or was it always on?
It was always deployed, but British Airways prided themselves on the fact that it never touched the ground. Well, allegedly anyway. So they'd be lined up on the runway, they'd get permission to take off, and the pilots would say 3, 2, 1 now. We would push the throttles fully forward. The aircraft would start to run down the runway. These afterburners would actually switch in automatically and remaining for 40 seconds to accelerate the aircraft for takeoff. Shortly after takeoff, the pilot would throttle back for noise abatement, and the flight engineer would then switch out these afterburners. Once he'd gone through the noise abatement area, they would continue then with full drive power without the reheat until they were over the Bristol Channel, and at that point they'd be about 29,000 feet, doing Mach 0.9. And at that point the flight engineer would then switch in these afterburners, and he would do it 2 at a time, because by which time they'd be serving the champagne and they wouldn't want them spilling the champagne. And he would set a clock running, and he would time that burn for 10 minutes, because although the afterburner increased the thrust by 20%, it doubled the fuel consumption. So they had to use it very sparingly. They used it 40 seconds for takeoff and 10 minutes or thereabouts to make the transition through the speed of sound. And then he would then switch these afterburners out again 2 at a time, and he would continue then with full drive power without the reheat. The aircraft would continue to climb and to accelerate until she was between 55,000 and 60,000 feet, doing Mach 2, and that would be 1,350 miles an hour. And at that point they would switch in the autopilot, and that would maintain that speed by adjusting the auto throttles and adjusting the height of the aircraft. They actually put a radiation meter in down here, and they wouldn't let female crew of childbearing age actually work on Concorde. They weren't worried about the pilots, but anyway, never turned out to be a problem. So they released that.
So they would be of a mature age.
Initially, yeah,
wow.
but once they realised that it wasn't a big issue, they relaxed that rule. But yeah, so everything above this table was used to fly the aircraft. There was 13 fuel tanks on Concorde, 5 in each wing and 3 in the fuselage. But not only did they use the fuel to actually power the aircraft, but they also used it to alter its centre of gravity to balance it, and also as a giant heat sink to keep the passengers cool with the air conditioning and to keep the skin of the aircraft cool. So the flight engineer was constantly pumping this blooming fuel round, taking the heat out of it, putting it in one tank, because he had a tank in the tip of the wing which got hot, so they'd move the fuel from there to another tank, agitate it and take the heat out of it. Because the aircraft got so hot in flight, they actually stretched between 6 and 10 inches. And one of the places where you could see just some of that expansion, just like to put the tips of your finger down.
I've seen that on a video, on the thingy, where put your fingers down there. Yeah.
Well, I've got a photograph of the flight engineer with his whole hand in there.
Yeah.
So they weren't telling lies. And when the last one flew into Filton, where it was built, he got the crew to sign his cap and stuck it in there, and it's actually trapped in there to this day.
Oh, right. Thank you.
I've got a photograph of that somewhere.
Put your iPhone in.
There it is.
Oh yeah. That's incredible. It's still down there now.
It is. It's still in that slot now, but they're not doing the tours on Filton at the moment. Somebody got killed. They fell off the steps. It wasn't a guest. It was somebody working on it and fell off the steps. And because of course when the doors open, you don't know. If the door was shut and the guard was back, you could quite easily fall off the steps. It's quite a long way off the ground, isn't it? It's not going anywhere.
Was that right?
Cheers. Cheers. Thanks a lot. Cheers. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
So
should we get one? Should we buy one?
I think we ought to buy one. Yeah.
Yeah, we ought to buy one. Do you think on our meagre wages we could afford to fuel it up?
Well, take a £5 to fill it with it, I think.
Just imagine the club card points you get for this. Awesome. Right, let's take another seat. Oh, excuse me. That's it. A supersonic toilet break. I was going to say something else, but I won't be crude.
I'm in the element here.
Loving it. Do you want me to get out of your way as well?
Yes.
Yes. So what an excellent tour it's been so far. I mean, it's not finished yet. We've done the outside, the inside. I can only share the small bits that I've managed to be able to record. It's going to be quite a long video, but like I've said before, this is for Ray. This is like a dream come true. I've always been interested in aircraft myself. Hopefully, there's been sections of the video that have been audible. Okay, it's throwing it down outside, but you can hear the aircraft in the background taking off. But what an experience! Amazing.
Good. Yes, amazing, mate. I love it.
Loving it.
Can't beat it. Coming next week.
Thank you to Ray's girlfriend as well.
Yes, thanks, Hayley. You're
Yeah.
the best.
Right, we'll go back inside and champers. What do you think?
Definitely.
This section at the back here, they do weddings as well. Right, the guy was saying as well that they've taken a lot of the fixtures out that can be removed easy, like seat belts and things like that, because they were going missing and ending up on eBay. And one of the bits of video that I recorded earlier, he was saying that a nose cone for the Concorde turned up on eBay, and it went for, oh no, not eBay, it was one of the the auction shows, and it went for £150,000. So that's quite an extravagant garden ornament. So that was that. An excellent tour. British Airways still own this one, obviously, or own all the BA operated ones. And he was saying that British Airways don't really care about it anymore. It was supposed to have like annual checks, that they were like following the procedures, because when these originally came up for offer, they had to put in a bid, pretty much like they did with the space shuttle. Because I suppose this is like to aviation and air travel. This is like what the space shuttle is to space travel. But British Airways don't care about it anymore, so it'll never fly again. Shame, really. Okay. As always, thanks for watching, thanks for subscribing, and I'll speak to you next time. Probably not from anywhere like this, but what a day. Speak to you all soon. Bye for now.